Transforming your life with hypnotherapy just got easier with your host, Julie from CoachingHypnosis.net.
Welcome back, dear listener, to Coaching Hypnosis. Yesterday, we took a trip back to the psychedelic 1960s to watch a wild-eyed street grifter turn campfire songs and hallucinogens into a lethal psychological weapon. Today, we're moving from the dusty horse ranches of California straight into the sterile, oak-panelled, hyper-professional offices of the American legal system. We are talking to a predator who didn't need to preach about an apocalypse to strip away a victim's agency. He just needed a retaining fee, a closed door, and a client facing the most stressful crisis of her life. Today, we decode the deeply disturbing case of Michael Fine. If you ask the average person, or honestly, even some old-school textbook hypnotherapists, they will confidently tell you one of the oldest myths in the industry. You can't hypnotize someone to do something they wouldn't normally do, and you absolutely cannot hypnotize without their conscious awareness. Let's look past the comforting institutional platitudes and be completely real modern strategists. That rule only applies when the subject isn't facing a severe, acute cortisol spike that completely melts their neurological defenses. Michael Fine was a prominent, highly successful divorce attorney in Lorain County, Ohio. He wasn't a mystic, he was an officer of the court, but behind that prestigious legal veneer lay a deeply clinical, calculated predator who weaponized standard conversational hypnosis, rapid vocal pacing, and somatic relaxation triggers to covertly induce deep, sonobalistic trances in his female clients, explicitly using those altered states to carry out serial sexual assault. In 2016, his psychological house of cards completely collapsed when he was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Today, we strip down the raw mechanics of how a trusted professional turned a legal consultation into an unconsented hypnotic trap. To understand how Michael Fine pulled this off, you have to look at the unique psychological state of a person sitting in a divorce attorney's office. These women weren't walking in looking for a spiritual breakthrough. They were terrified, emotionally exhausted, and financially desperate. They were trying to secure custody of their kids, escape toxic marriages, and survive an incredibly high-stakes legal system. In the world of brain state architecture, that is a textbook recipe for a highly vulnerable, hyper-aroused nervous system. Their conscious minds were already completely overloaded with anxiety. Fine established immediate pacing and rapport by presenting himself as their absolute savior. He would bring them into his private inner office, close the door, and sit directly across from them. Then he would pivot the conversation away from the legal paperwork. He would comment on how incredibly tense they looked, lower his vocal register, and begin using highly repetitive, rhythmic pacing loops. He would instruct them to breathe deeply, focus entirely on the sounds of his voice, and let go of their worries, seamlessly guiding them from a state of acute panic right down into a deep, highly suggestible trance state. But he wasn't installing emotional resilience. He was establishing a highly coordinated, multi-layered assault protocol. Phase 1, rapport hunt. Target emotionally exhausted, highly anxious divorce clients by presenting as the ultimate professional savior and legal protector. Phase 2, bypassing. Use rhythmic breathing cues, physical grounding prompts, and rapid vocal lowering to seamlessly transition acute anxiety into deep sonambulism trance. Phase 3, isolation. Carry out the physical assault while explicitly embedding linguistic suggestions to scrub the episodic memory before waking the client back up. Once these women were in a deep hypnotic state, their critical faculty completely bypassed. Fine would carry out the physical assault. But the true systemic horror of this methodology was the memory management. Before bringing them back to conscious awareness, he would explicitly program their subconscious minds with the post-hypnotic amnesia suggestions telling them, You will not remember anything that happened in this office. You'll only remember that we discussed your legal case, and you will feel completely relaxed and happy when you leave. And for a long time, the human brain's desire to protect itself actually let the script work. Women would walk out of his office feeling utterly bizarre, deeply disoriented, and experiencing severe unexplained time loss with zero conscious memory of the trauma. The breakthrough came in 2014 when one incredible anonymous victim noted her clothes were disarranged after a meeting and realised her conscious timeline didn't add up. Instead of brushing it off as a stress-induced brain fog, she went straight to the police, agreed to wear a hidden recording device, and walked right back into his office for a follow-up consultation. Let's look at the absolute sarcastic absurdity of what Fine thought he could get away with. You have a licensed, practicing attorney, someone who literally went to school for years to understand the boundaries of evidence and testimony, who convinced himself that he was a literal courtroom Jedi. He genuinely believed that he could wave his hands, mutter a few deep-breathing sentences, and cleanly erase a serial felony from a person's temporal lobe like he was clicking delete on a Word document. It is the peak of arrogant, predatory delusion. Let's be real. If a lawyer today starts dimming the office lights, matching your respiration rate, and whispering that your divorce documents require you to enter a blissful state of cosmic slumber, you don't stay to hear the legal brief. You sprint out the door and call the Bar Association. But under the heavy, confusing fog of Fine's covert trance cues, he actually thought his professional status made him completely invisible to the law. On that undercover tape, investigators listened in real time as Fine smoothly put the victim under, began muttering crude, explicit commands, and proceeded to incriminate himself so thoroughly that his legal defense team essentially had to throw their hands up and plead out. As clinical hypnotists and legal strategists, we have to look past the visceral disgust of this case to analyse the specific, terrifying mechanics Fine exploited. He didn't use a magic spell. He utilised standard, highly structured conversational trance induction through 3 core levers. 1. The stress-induced induction. When a human being is in a state of high-stress panic, their attention narrows naturally. In hypnosis, we call this a spontaneous focus trap. Fine took that existing high cortisol focus and seamlessly redirected it onto his voice. By acting as the sole source of relief from their legal panic, he bypassed their critical thinking filter without ever needing to say the word hypnosis. 2. Post-hypnotic amnesia framing. The subconscious mind is highly protective, but it's also highly literal. When a subject is in deep somnambulistic state, the brain can easily compartmentalize an experience if instructed to do so by a figure of absolute authority. Fine used targeted post-hypnotic linguistic commands to push the physical experience deep into the implicit memory network, keeping it completely cut off from explicit conscious recall. 3. Somatic anchoring of authority. Fine fused his physical office, his voice, and his role as their legal advocate into a massive psychological anchor. Every time the clients entered the room, their nervous systems were already primed to hand over control to the person holding the keys to their legal survival. Fine ultimately pleaded guilty to 5 counts of kidnapping with sexual motivation and was sentenced to 12 years in prison, stripped of his low license permanently. He tried to turn the ultimate tool of human psychological relief into a covert instrument of systemic violation. The chilling takeaway of Michael Fine's case is stark, unyielding reminder that the true personal autonomy must always be guarded, especially when we're navigating the heaviest crisis of our lives. An ethical practitioner, whether they are a coach, a clinical hypnotist, a doctor, or an attorney, will always work to solidify your conscious awareness, build your real-world agency and anchor your nervous system in absolute awake reality. Anyone who demands that you shut your critical thinking or ignore your gut instinct to receive their help is running a dangerous predatory script. If you've realized that you're navigating an immense amount of high-performance stress, corporate anxiety, or heavy life transition, and you're looking for an independent, bulletproof way to recover your focus without ever handing over your sovereign control, I invite you to come back home to your own internal compass. If you're ready to clear that cognitive fog, stabilize your nervous system, and lead your life with a sharp, sovereign, and completely unburdened mind, I invite you to book your free 40-minute clarity call. Together, we'll dismantle the external noise, ground your boundaries in solid reality, and install a powerful, unshakable subconscious identity focused entirely on your true present authority. Remember, aligned subconscious plus healed history equals unshakable leadership. Thank you for listening today. Align your mind, visualize your future, grow your business. Mindfully yours, Julie.